Okay, everybody, I saw the video of Charlie Kirk with the gunshot. Sorry for your loss with the incident. I hope you get better. You'll be fine. You'll be great. You'll be okay. Don't worry. Yahweh will protect you. Don't worry. This is what I'm talking about. This is the things that I did. FDNY, the Belmore Fire Department, the PBA, the Benevolent. I warning you guys. The National Rifle Association. Certain things. I'm warning you. You're testing. No offense. It's not James. It's not James. I mean Charles Kirk. It's not Charles Kirk's fault. But you need to be aware. You're going into territory. They're at that Utah University, or that school, the university. You're in their dormitory. Be very careful what you say to certain people. I'm not saying to him. I'm saying to a lot of people out there. The whole purpose of the gun regulation, because I had a carrying license. I've had that stuff, and I promoted awareness because James and Charlie in Freeport helped me get the carrying license. I had to go to a gun range and take a safety course, and then I learned or got trained in not the AmeriCorps. I got trained something similar like it, and I had to take a safety course, and I took a safety course at Bethpage State Park with law enforcement or lawmen or peace officers. I did things. I had to train some people with carrying licenses and things related to that nature. And you have to be very careful. So, my friend Harold Peterson was a United States Marshal. I'm a big promoter with the Sheriff's Department, and I'm a big promoter with the United States Marshals besides the police and the FBI. I'm a big promoter with those organizations. But you need to understand something. He'll get better. Don't worry about that. You don't need to worry about him. Send the post. Pray for him. He'll be fine. I've seen worse. Don't worry. You need to understand something in regards to that matter. Ladies and gentlemen. Kids need to be aware. You know, they had a school, Columbine, and there was a show about a very famous person. I'll post the information, but I'll give you a little rundown because my relative was an editor for some of that stuff. You need to have the gun registered in the system. Something I brought up when I was in university. This is when I was in Harvard University. You have a right to a carrying license. You should have the thing registered into the system. In every state, there should be a registry system where there should be a manager or a group where they constantly check on these people. They do a psychology evaluation. They do an evaluation. My thing, it should be every 2 to 3 years. They should have you go through a check and a version of what you call a physical. Now, private investigators for a very long time have promoting what I've been saying. And even security guards and armed security have been saying the same thing. We have to have a right to defend ourselves. You have to understand, everybody. I don't want to upset anybody or be rude. But those people that are out there, they're sick in the head. You can't, ladies and gentlemen, when you're my friend who's in the ATF, his name is Andrew, who's in the ATF. He's a very good friend of mine. You have to be careful with transferring your weapons from one state to another. You need to explain that to the officer, because when you get pulled over, you're going to have to deal with a person. Not, I can't be that person anymore, where I tell you on the telephone, on the cell phone, be quiet, don't say anything. And this, or there's the guy who's the game warden, or the state troopers, and they're wondering what's in the car. They just like domestic violence. It's the same thing with domestic. It's the same matter with domestic violence in the house, just like it is in the car. You don't know. Officers have to be very, very careful when they walk or approach a vehicle. They have to keep a distance. They have to open the door. They might have to touch the back of the car. Some officers do that. And attorneys should understand that that's a problem. Because you have to be careful with DNA evidence. So I'm going to explain something about working stamps and things that have to do with working stamps and evidence. You got to be very careful with touching anything or tainting any evidence. If you're in law, or if you're a peace officer or a lawman, you got to be very careful with that stuff, because attorneys will eat you up. They're like, some of these attorneys are like sharks or wolves. They don't like that with the DWI and charges related to that. You got to be very careful, ladies and gentlemen, because I've seen both sides. I had friends that were those guys that they're like the Long Island auditors. They go into the post office and they need to, why they need to check it? Because there was investigations done. You know why they need to go or check near the precinct? Because they have to investigate for news journalism. But they have to explain, they do have to do a version of the explanation, but they really don't have to explain what they're doing. They do need to know who you work for. They do need to know that. But they really don't need you need to give them some explanation. But you have to worry about those words, reasonable doubt, all those police lingo. You have suspicion. What type of suspicion do you have? The whole train of thought. That's what I mean. You have to have a reason to pull somebody over. You have to have a reason to go into, a house. You have to have a warrant. You have to have a specific reason. Ladies and gentlemen, I just didn't get this criminal investigation book for nothing. This is not just a book from Nassau Community College. Introduction to Policing. I just didn't use this from Nassau Community College, everybody. Yes, reasonable suspicion. They have to have more than reasonable suspicion. They have to check with color of law. They have to check with their penal code. They have to check with federal courts and job discrimination. They have to check with facts. Just gonna look. Just give me a second, ladies and gentlemen. Ethics and the police. Ethics is defined as the study of what contributes to good or bad behavior. Corruption makes good books and films. The Kepper, KNAPP, Commission Discovery Corruption. Types and form of corruption. Sleeping on duty. Drug-related corruption. This is all the stuff that's in this book. Response to police corruption. They have a system for internal affairs, everybody. Some of my relatives did that. Stefan and Adam, my friends did that for a living. Citizen oversight. So, I'll give you more information and I'll close this book. But I want to give you the blow-by-blow information. Vehicles. Okay. Okay, I'm going to close it. But I'll give you guys more information as the time goes on, everybody. The Long Island auditors, some of those people, they went into court. And I want to explain something to you guys so you're at least aware. There are certain lingo words. I don't want to use the lingo words because a police officer, most of my friends that are police officers, are firefighters or EMTs or DEA or whatever field they're in. They're gonna look at this video and start laughing. Ladies and gentlemen, I had to do an awareness. I had to do a PowerPoint course on all of this stuff in college. And not just in college. I had to do it for the AmeriCorps. And I had to do it for things that are related to not just legal, but also for things related. Because there are things in that book that is also related to medical. Things that have to do with the emergency medical technician. Which has to do with negligence, because there are certain things, ladies and gentlemen, that deal with medical that you have to be careful with that taboo word, malpractice, and confidential information. Some people have to be careful with that word HIPAA. Or the other acronym, which is I think it's with an F, which I'm not gonna give you the whole analogy, but that protects you for education. It's family something. I think it's the FE. I think it's the family education. It has to do with protecting your rights for education. So, this is what I want to explain in regards to these things. This, specifically, this flashlight. So, when I investigated, when I was in private investigations, when I was a lot younger, I had to deal with certain things where these people like the Long Island auditors came, or some organization like that, and I don't know if they tainted evidence, I don't know what they did. And some of my friends like Chuck or Charles or Anthony or Roger, I'm going to explain something. I don't like talking about it. They caused an incident. See, ladies and gentlemen, the FBI is very, very important, just like the DEA and the ATF. They're all very important. But sometimes when you have things with the post office, with mail fraud and things related to that nature, you got to be very careful, with what you say and what you do on the video chat, with the camera system. If you guys have those things with the police department, let me ask you a question. Why don't you have those things for security officers or armed security people? Or why don't you have things for us that are in the private investigation department? So it protects us. And some of these people, see, I used to do, at 2020 companies, I used to do door-to-door sales. I was selling Verizon. I don't sell it. I was doing stuff with Sloman's Oil and the home security system or business security system. I don't do that anymore. I had to leave that field because I went into the IT field, which has to do with technician or technical support for like things related to Verizon or Verizon Wireless or Verizon Files. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have to explain. I need to explain information. You need to understand this information so you can apply it to any of your things. So, you guys at the police, you have the camera. That's great and all. Number one thing, I'm going to explain something to you. You can't take a photo of somebody when they're in the ambulance. You're not allowed to do that. That's invasion of privacy. Do you know what happened with me, ladies and gentlemen? They did that to me. They're not allowed to do that. Do you know my picture is used, what they explained to me with Mason and my friend James, my picture is used. They have things in foreign intelligence that if you police departments take photos of people like my relatives and I, we're not going to take offense to it. We'll just take you into court and your own version of the correction officers or the court officers, they're going to have you arrested. I'm not going to have you arrested. They're going to have you arrested, or an attorney will have you arrested. Because you can't take a photo of me. You're not allowed to do that. Not only me, my friend Mason. My friend Mason, he had to leave the FBI. He's in the CIA now. He had to leave. One cop pulled that nonsense on him. He did a frisk on him, and he had his wallet or his credentials in his back pocket. And he said, "You're going to love this." And he sees the picture. He sees the thing. Well, you know what happens next when a federal officer, gets frisked or there's anything with corruption? Congratulations. Somebody had to write an incident report about that. Who had to write that incident report? Wasn't just me. There was other incident reports. And the federal agency, I'm not saying we, I'm saying my relatives are having me explain this. There is internal affairs that deals with that stuff. And police officers, there is a guy who I really appreciate, the guy who was in the sheriff's department, who was on this YouTube. And he arrested the own officer. He was blowing through a light or doing whatever. And the guy who was in the sheriff's car pulled him over. What the heck are you doing? That's what's going on in the law enforcement community now, ladies and gentlemen. You need to be very careful, because I'm just going to explain this because I'm an advocate not just for the police. I'm an advocate for the sheriffs. I'm an advocate for law enforcement in general. You need to be very careful what you say and what you do on the social media. Not just I have to be careful. You all have to be careful. Because you're driving me up a freaking wall. You know, it's very, very convenient to the National Security Agency or an organization I call the DEA and ATF. It's very convenient to the National Security Agency that you like to invade the ATF and DEA's privacy. It's very, very, very nice. And how when I was in the AmeriCorps, you didn't invade my privacy. You invaded other people's privacy that deals with the stuff in the ATF and DEA, and that's wrong. So thank you guys. Have a pleasant and wonderful day.